Rated T for teen.
The PSP is honestly a perfect handheld console in terms of games. Its small size and a variety of different colors it comes in, it is regarded as one of the greatest handhelds even after its release. Even though there are better handhelds that emulate every PSP title, people still prefer the PSP. And to me, that speaks volumes and is a clear indicator of how crazy of an airball Sony managed to cook up with the Portal. Good fucking God. But despite how ridiculous the Portal looks, in my opinion, it still managed to sell enough for Sony to consider making a new handheld that can play PS4 games on the go. But you know, this feels something Fernando would say. Matter of fact, everyone is making statements. Some say that Sony is done with handhelds completely, some say that Sony is observing the market with a comically large magnifying glass, or some say that Sony's focusing on the plans for their next home console as we speak. There is just too many conflicting reports about the topic, and nobody really knows if we're getting a successor to the PSP or not. It can only... Hello? Wait, what do you mean I'm forgetting something? Wait, what do you mean there's a successor to the PSP already? There is? Since when? So, okay, well, I'll get on it ASAP. Yes, okay, bye-bye. Maybe I skipped something. The PS Vita was released back in 2011 in Japan first, and then in 2012 in North America and the rest of the world. To many, this was considered the golden era of gaming. Skyward Sword, Arkham City, Portal 2, Skyrim, Uncharted 3, Dead Space 2, Infamous 2. All of these game releases came in during this time frame. That year had back-to-back hits that laid the foundation of gaming in those years. The Vita was released during this time frame, and this was the time when PS3 and Xbox 360 were entering their final years of support. Yeah. You feel old yet? The Vita was a major step up from the PSP. Instead of having this annoying nub that slides around like a Looney Tunes character on a slip and slide, the Vita has two joysticks, which opened so many possibilities for FPS, platformers, and Vita exclusive games. But I still feel like I have to give some props to the PSP. It made the single nub work when it came to platformers and games that were specifically made for the PSP. If the game had a camera, the PSP would utilize it by having you press the shoulder buttons and then use the nub to move around the camera. Now, this worked for platformers and other games, but not quite for FPS shooters, since you would need another joystick to move the camera. And you know, do I really need to explain? The Vita has so many other improvements that iron out the problems that the PSP had. It is also a multimedia device just like the PSP, but with the bonus of touchscreens on the front and the back, and also two cameras in the front and the back. Yeah, the cameras look like Minecraft quality, but listen, it was nice that they took the idea of the PSP camera accessory and built it in a console, making it feel like a phone on steroids. Did I mention the Vita has 3G? Yeah, it had only for AT&T, but listen, come on, it was still cool. Let's talk about the real thing, the one thing that you buy a console for: the games. Now, when it comes to video game exclusives, you probably think of Sony or Nintendo. I've grown up with the Sony game consoles, and I've played nearly all of them at a certain point in my life, so forgive me if I might be doing tricks on it or might seem a little biased. The Vita is no slouch when it comes to games. For example, Gravity Rush transports you into another world filled with floating islands and mysterious beasts that roam around the islands. The game starts off with beautiful cutscenes showing off one of the many districts that you can visit. After that, your character wakes up with amnesia. In a nutshell, you are now tasked to figure out your place in all this. The game starts off very simple in its concept. Figure out your place in this world and figure out your identity as well. But then it starts picking up pace and bam, the game has you invested. It never feels like you are getting cock-teased by the story. You learn things at a good pace, so it doesn't feel like the story rushes or drags on. And every time Kat, the protagonist, learns something new, you learn something new. So you feel more connected to the character because you have no idea where the fuck you even are. Like, look at this fucking place. Where the fuck do I even order McDonald's from? The gameplay has you using gravity to traverse the world, fight beasts, and figure out the main character's place in the world. Pretty much an all-in-one package. The game has great story, good gameplay, and it feels very unique with its presentation. I advise anyone who has a Vita to try this game out themselves. Uncharted Golden Abyss is a prequel that is the typical Uncharted experience on a handheld. Adventure, treasure hunting, climbing, and even more climbing, and more climbing, and more climbing. Yeah. Even more. It still retains that Uncharted feel to it. The game mechanics can be comparable to Uncharted 1. A solid game for the Vita that is a nice addition to the Uncharted lore if you feel like playing an underrated title. Media Molecule, the same people who made the smash hit Little Big Planet on the PS3, made both Little Big Planet PS Vita and Tearaway, which both use the Vita's quirks. Since there are touchscreens on the back and the front, you get a very unique experience that can't be easily replicated by any other game on the Vita. And the best part is the customization of your character or making the snowflakes in Tearaway look like wee-wees. You know, you can choose whatever you want to do in these two games. The world is your oyster. These games leave a lasting impact on you. They are very different in tone and style, but one thing is for certain, they utilize the Vita's quirky features and power capabilities. With the Vita's built-in gyro controls, you can control where you land in Gravity Rush, your face is shown in the sun in Tearaway, and you can take photos of yourself using the Vita selfie camera and place them on a wall in LBP. The devs knew ball when they were implementing everything. But let's say you don't want to play Vita exclusives. Well, I would call you an Arkham patient. But what if you genuinely wanted to play something other than PS Vita exclusives? Let's say PS2 classics? Well, you absolutely can. You can play a lot of the PS2 masterpieces like the Sly Trilogy, Ratchet & Clank Trilogy, Jak and Daxter Trilogy, and even the bald man himself, Kratos, from God of War 1 and 2. There are even some Dreamcast games playable here. Plus, the various indie titles can be played here as well. The Vita truly has it all. Some games that were a surprise to have here were the Ninja Gaiden games. They have been on my gaming backlog for years, and one day I'll complete them and platinum them, which is easier said than done because, well, there is something that makes it very difficult. I don't know, some percentage that I forgot to look at. I don't know exactly what it is. There are also some other PS3 games that were ported here. Sure, the frame rate gives you the impression that you are holding a tactical nuke in your hands, ready to go off at any second. But this is still very impressive to have PS3 games on the go. Even looking back at this year when the 3DS had the same ports and were significantly downgraded for it to run properly. The biggest question that might be on your mind right now is how the fuck do I fit in this equation? Because I've not even talked about how I got the Vita. So now this story will make sense. if we have to go back to the year. The year is 2010. The world was a different place back in the day. YouTube was still in its infancy. PS3 was trying to find its footing after a rocky launch, and I was a 7-year-old kid, eating boogers and watching Spider-Man, the usual stuff. One day, my dad had asked his friend if I could stay at their place for the night, since my dad is a busy man. His friend agreed. After I arrived at his place, the first thing I saw was a PS1 lying on the ground. It had only one game, an underrated gem called Alundra. My dad's friend kept talking about this game, how interesting it was. He gave me a Martin Luther King-ass speech that lit a fire in me that wanted to play that game. Plus, the game cover had me interested in trying it regardless, even if my dad's friend never gave the speech. I started the console. After that, I started playing the game. It was filled with anime cutscenes, and it was great. I enjoyed the music too. It was great. I had a great time. Now, when it actually came to me playing the game, I did not know what the fuck I was doing. The game was older than me, so I had trouble knowing where to go so I could progress the story. As you may know, or as you don't, if you don't know, Alundra was a very puzzle-based game and required an understanding of the English language. And back then, listen, I could barely fucking tie my shoelaces and stuttered harder than Porky Pig from Looney Tunes, so English was off the table for me. I was now 19. I was laying in bed doing, I don't fucking know, probably watching dog eating pickles. I was very bored, all right? Then after watching that thought-provoking video, I remembered the game. I searched it up and tried to look into what PS consoles had the game. It was on the PSP/PS Vita, and of course on PS1. That was the first time I really considered buying a console just to play that game. Though I never bought it in 2023, I did buy it in 2024. This is back when I was in the army, minding my own business, until I realized that one of my acquaintances had just purchased a DSi. Remember that thing? It was a follow-up to the original Nintendo DS Lite, and it was an upgrade. But I feel like it got kind of overshadowed by the Nintendo DS Lite. Anyway, he kept saying that it was a good purchase and exclaimed that even though it was a good purchase, it would still be not as good as a 3DS. And then after a while, he did buy the 3DS, which only strengthened my resolve to buy a PS Vita. Skipping a few steps, I had finally acquired the PS Vita, and oh my god, I fell in love. It made the army less of a pain in the ass. Every time we had free time in the army, I just play on my Vita. It was a great experience just to sit back, relax, and play on my Vita. In total, I've completed around 32 games, aced around 16, and gotten 8 platinums, all on the Vita. As you can see, I fell in love with gaming again because I can bring the console everywhere. One time I was taking my dog out doing its normal dog business, and I accidentally brought the Vita with me when I should have left it at home. And this just goes to show how pocketable the Vita truly is. In a world where now it's filled with Steam Decks and Asus ROG Ally portable gaming PCs, I do miss the time when gaming handhelds were just very compact in size and just fit in your pocket. Sure, you can bring the Switch with you, but that's only if you have a backpack. And also if you have crazy ass pockets like this. Can you put the Switch into your pocket without looking sus? I do not think so. With the Vita, 3DS, PSP, DS, or any other Nintendo handheld device, they can easily be stored in more convenient spaces than a Nintendo Switch. With a Nintendo Switch, man, it just looks like it's begging to get robbed. Let me tell you a story regarding the Nintendo Switch. I actually have a perfect example. One time I was going home from some activity
probably just hang out with my friends, whatever. I was on my phone doom scrolling TikTok. Then suddenly, I saw someone playing on a Switch, playing Animal Crossing. Now, normally I would have probably minded my business, but then I realized that the Switch was also drawing other unwanted attention. The bus was filled with kids who were staring at the girl playing the Switch, and they looked like they were going to attempt to make a whole Sly Cooper pickpocket move when the girl was not paying attention. That fucking Switch was not gonna be safe in that backpack, I'm telling you. Genuinely, the kids looked like they were drooling over the fucking Switch. Me personally, I would not be willing to carry around the Switch on my backpack playing it on the bus, because that is way too much of a risk for it to get stolen. The truth is, the Switch is very loud and more conspicuous than the Vita. The Vita is way more toned down and doesn't get much attention. The Vita is literally comparable to my phone since both of them are the same size. Believe it or not, many have confused the Vita for a phone, since seeing a Vita is like trying to spot a legendary Pokemon. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do any of this? Why do people gravitate towards an old handheld device that doesn't even offer that much compared to more powerful alternatives? For example, there is a clear rise in Android-based devices that can emulate a whole library of games. So why not get that? Why would you want to own a Vita in the year 2025? Now would be a great time to talk about Stop. Let's rewind a bit. Back when Sony released the PSP, modders had wet dreams of just cracking the console wide open because of the multimedia device capabilities. When the OG 1000 model was released, people kept trying to find a way to mod, and that proved to be successful. Sony wasn't rocking with this, obviously, and tried to roll out updates to stop the modding from happening. They also tried to make every model after the 1000 harder to crack. Then after the brilliant attempts of ensuring that no modding would take place on the PSP platform, they went on to the Vita. They focused everything onto the Vita. They strengthened the security, ensuring that no modding would take place. Do I seriously need to explain what the fuck happened next? In the end, modders win and Sony lose. Now, what can you do with a modded Vita? There are plenty of things that a PS Vita can do while modded. I'll explain some of the basic things you can do with the Vita. I'll not explain everything since you gotta find out yourself. I'll talk about the basic stuff, but there are some things that I'll sprinkle in that are a bit more underrated just for you. Now, with a modded system, you get the basic stuff. You get emulators, game backups, and all that other cool stuff. But what makes the Vita unique is that you can have your UI transform into a PSP XMB. Yes, you heard that right. You can make your whole UI transform into an old PSP XMB. I mean, of course, there's RetroArch, but can it emulate the whole PSP XMB? I do not think so, my man. As you might guess, the PSP is native to the Vita. And also PSP has PS1 games, so you can play PSP and PS1 games very, very easily on the Vita. And in fact, I feel like the PS1 games are way better on the Vita than on the PSP. Then there's a store. Yeah, I'm gonna call it that. There's a store where you can get your Vita game backups, PSP and PS1 games as well, making it a delight to play everything on the Vita. Now keep in mind, not every Vita game, PS1 game, or PSP game is on the store. Sometimes you have to do a bit of a roundabout way on getting them, but there are ways, and I am not gonna disclose them because I do not support piracy in any way whatsoever. What other consoles can the Vita emulate? I'm glad you asked. Everything that is now considered retro gaming can be emulated here, including SNES, GBA, NES, Mega Drive, and others. There is even a DS emulator, something that was previously impossible to even comprehend on the Vita. The highest it can go is N64 and Dreamcast, which is very impressive for a handheld that was released in 2011. There are other things that the Vita can do as well. You can use an app to stream your computer screen onto your Vita, read manga or comics through I don't know how, I'm not gonna even say it because I'm gonna butcher it.
Noboru.
Bump up the resolution and FPS in your games using Vita graphics, change brightness settings in Vita Bright, have remote play on the fucking PS5. In short, there are a lot of technical things and technical tweaks that you can do to the Vita to make it a better experience. I know for certain that I might have forgotten to mention this or that. Between you and me, I'm not gonna have a long ass speech about the technical jargon of the Vita. So I'll move into the fun part.
Stand up and dance. And move your waistline.
As cited earlier, there are many PS2 ports that you can play on the Vita, and all of them run perfectly. Well, I mean, most of them. However, many games were not officially ported to the Vita, such as Max Payne, Bully, and the OG PS2 GTA trilogy. That's where the Homebrew community comes in. The Vita has an amazing community that has made it possible to get all the ports I just listed. You can legitimately play most of Rockstar's greatest hits. All of the GTA games run very well on the Vita, making it a perfect way to play the OG trilogy on the go. And there are even ports that should make the Vita into a potential bomb, like that one Samsung phone, but surprisingly run smoothly as butter. Cuphead, Hollow Knight, and the Simpsons hit and run game? What the fuck? All of these operate so well that I honestly think that you could complete the games 100% without any issues, and you most likely can. There are no compromises. This is not a half-assed port where you look at it and see, oh, it's not like the original. No, these are as original as they come. They're the same as any other version. The only minus I'd give to these ports that, due to the Vita being an old timer now and everything, loading times on these unofficial ports take very long. Not long enough that you might have like a whole family while the game is loading, but depending on the port, whether it's an official or an unofficial one, you can see that it takes a bit longer than usual. It depends on the size of the port as well. Also, since the Vita is modded, you can have access to games that were previously only released to a certain region. For example, a lot of people were bummed out that the Vita never had a Monster Hunter game. I mean, let me let you on a little secret. In Japan, of course, it is a different story. Monster Hunter Frontier Z was released in Japan. Only in Japan. But with a modded Vita, you only go to the store, select the region section, and go to Japan, and boom, with push of a button, you can now become Japanese. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I am not fluent in Japanese. So what can I do, and what can you do to mitigate this issue? Well, you install a patch. These fan-made patches can already make it an amazing experience even better. For example, you can translate a Japanese game to be fully English, and that is the case in Monster Hunter. You can have an English patch, sort of. You know, it only translates the important text and not the whole game, but it makes the game way more approachable and playable instead of using a Google Translate to decipher every text every time your assumption skills hit a roadblock. The latest patch I've installed for a game is for God of War Collection, and it is a cutscene mod that makes it possible for you to watch all the cutscenes in higher resolution and makes the cutscenes widescreen. So now you don't have to worry about those annoying black borders that you get in the OG PS2 God of War. And of course, the themes. Like the PSP, the Vita also has themes. Most official themes are not that impressive, but I did find this 20th anniversary PlayStation theme and a cool Danganronpa theme. Now, most of the focus will be on the custom themes. The custom themes can be found on an app called Custom Theme Manager, and this app has thousands of themes.
Some range from high quality themes to just high effort shitposts. I've even made some themes of my own. Themes are constantly being added to this app, so you can find some absolute treats or some absolute stinkers. Now that I've told you everything you need to know and taken you into this magical carpet ride of what a modded Vita can do and some background lore on the Vita, many might scratch their heads and wonder, why did the Vita fail? Let's be honest, this is not the first Vita-related video you've ever watched, so I'll quickly run through the reasons. Now, Sony had these proprietary memory cards which made it very tedious to get games since game data isn't stored anywhere. They also cost you a fucking liver if you plan on buying them. I feel like PS Vita marketing also wasn't as great as the PSP ads that I saw back in the day. I saw way more PSP ads back in the day when it was the current console. This most likely affected the sales. Now lastly, Sony just gave up on the console. Now, one thing about Sony is that they always celebrate their consoles. Doesn't matter if it's the PS3, PS2, PSP, they always make sure to celebrate their consoles. They try to celebrate all of the consoles that define the generation, making it feel like they do respect the consoles themselves. It's not that Sony is the one to blame for everything. Granted, there were competitors with Nintendo, and Nintendo marketed the 3DS way more. And also, this was back when mobile gaming was becoming the norm, so even the 3DS struggled. Now it has changed. Most people don't view mobile gaming as highly as they did back in 2012, and handhelds are making a resurgence. Back then, it was evident that the PS Vita was a very powerful handheld that had a lot to offer. If you look at the canceled Vita games, hell, you realize that the Vita was destined to greatness. I mean, hell, they were going to port the OG Nier from PS3. OG Nier? Can you believe that? Nier was going to be one of the games that the Vita would have had to offer, but due to many developers having no interest in working on a dying platform, it was beginning to look like the end for the Vita. So, in response, Sony pulled the plug, pulled out, and went to grab the milk on the way, leaving the Vita and never returning. The indie scene kept it alive for more years to come, but it wasn't enough. It was clear that the Vita's early retirement was on the horizon. Then came the year 2013. Sony was rolling out the PS4 during this time. They tried to give the Vita a new purpose for it to function like a remote play device, like the PSP. However, in PSP's case, that is more of a tech demo than anything else. But with the Vita, you could play PS3 and PS4 remote play, of course. But because the Vita already is a little bit hard to control with the touchpad in the back, it was damn near impossible to get that momentum back that the Vita had during its launch. Worst of all, Vita wasn't getting any games anymore, so indie games tried their best when it came to keeping the Vita alive. It worked, but ultimately, the handheld fell into obscurity. Many blamed Sony for not investing in a console that had a lot to offer. Sony had been known to not give up on their consoles. The PS3 is a good example, since it also didn't perform well as intended, but eventually it did beat the 360 in sales. Seeing as the PS4 was doing so great, it only made it evident that Sony had no interest in trying to revive the Vita. But then, a light came from the heavens. The modders came in. They realized the full potential of the Vita and made it sprout wings. They gave it a new life. People started to realize how many games this handheld truly had. Many fan-made ports started to appear on the Vita. It is now regarded as an underrated gem by many who own it, including myself. There is still active development on this handheld, which makes me happy to be an owner of such a portable device. And I truly want nothing else but to hope that my Vita lasts a long time. Now, what do I have left? I looked through all of the quirks, and last thing that I've written down, is it worth it? 100%.
I've purchased dumb shit frequently. If I had the money, I'd probably be on some Nicolas Cage shit, buying a bunch of islands, having crazy fossils in my house. But like many people, I have a thing for convenience. I have never had a similar experience with a game console since the PS3 or the PS2. This strikes a beautiful balance between being nostalgic and being modern. It is a nice blend of the two. This is the first handheld that I've ever owned, and to have a handheld as awesome as the Vita as my first ever handheld, it makes me cry tears of joy. But like all consoles, the Vita is not perfect. The back touchscreen does feel gimmicky at times and makes it feel that Sony crammed way too much onto the Vita, and everything feels very weird with the touchscreen elements. I do like the touchscreen elements. I might be in the minority on that one, but it did make it convenient to use. But I do get that majority of players would prefer it if we would trade the touchscreen for physical L2 and R2 triggers. Also, a lot of people say that this is the perfect console for emulating, which isn't true since the Dreamcast is the highest the Vita can go to, and even that isn't fully reliable. Yes, the Vita can emulate many retro game consoles, and now someone is working very hard to get DS emulation on the Vita working. I still advise you to get a Retro Pocket 4, which has very good emulation, can even play PS2 games, but if you're willing to spend more money, then getting an Odin 2 Mini is also your best bet, since it looks like a Vita and even has L2 and R2 triggers. But if you like the homebrew aspects of the Vita, then I fully recommend the Vita. Compared to the Odin 2 Mini, the Vita is way more desirable because it's cheaper. Also, Vita emulation is still in its infancy, so Vita is the best way to play Vita games. Now, there are two revisions of the Vita, the 1000 and the 2000. I have the OG thick model because I like them thick. The only minus is a sci-fi ass charger that you get with the 1000 model, but I'm chilling. I have a very small and nice USB-C cable that reduces my problems. You can also buy these at AliExpress. Honestly, the 2000 is way better in terms of ergonomics. You know, if you look at it, there's a better charging port, and yeah, it's way lighter. However, it also has its downsides. Since it's cheaper, it's possible to get that level 99 stick drift, which the 1000 doesn't get because of Hall effect joysticks. 1000 supremacy, baby! Also, if you don't fuck with the screen being LCD, then the 1000 is the better option. Finally, I want to address the huge ass elephant in the room, the price. Remember when I said that the Vita is way cheaper compared to the Odin 2? Yeah, well, I might have told a bit of a lie. Some people charge $300 for the Vita, which is not ideal. I was very lucky and I got it for 50 euros, but some might not be so lucky. The reasonable price would be around 150 euros. Because let's be honest, I'm not paying that fucking amount of money to get a handheld. 300 for a handheld? That is absurd. With that amount of money, I could buy a PS5, Steam Deck, or a ROG Ally. I suggest looking through eBay and trying to find good sellers. Try Japanese stores. They know how to take care of their devices. Before I leave, remember to buy an SD to Vita. Memory cards are a hassle to buy, and I suggest getting this so you can easily get the perfect amount of games to your Vita. Some have escaped from Arkham Asylum and purchased a 1 terabyte micro SD card. What are you gonna do? Get a whole fucking Vita, PSP, and PS1 library onto that shit? That's crazy. At that point, I would just ask you, are you really gonna play through all of those fucking games? But yeah, I'm gonna go play God of War on the Vita right now. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.